I'm 65, a retired nurse who sacrificed everything for my daughter Emily. On my birthday, she gave me a $5 scarf while gifting her mother-in-law a $75,000 BMW, calling my decades of sacrifice the minimum. I vanished that night. 6 months later, she found me desperate and broke. What I did next changed everything. Before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Comment below, what city are you watching from? Now let's dive in. I woke before dawn, like I always did. 35 years of nursing shifts had trained my body to resist sleep past 5 a.m., even though I'd been retired for 6 months now. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists in small Ohio neighborhoods where everyone knows your name and your business. Tomorrow, I'd turn 65. I made coffee in the same pot I'd used for 2 decades, the one with the chipped handle Emily always said I should replace. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the lemon cleaner I'd used yesterday, scrubbing counters that were already clean. Nervous energy, I suppose. Emily was coming tomorrow, and I wanted everything perfect. Emily, even thinking her name, made my chest tighten with a complicated knot of love and something else I couldn't quite name. I sat at the kitchen table watching dawn creep through the window and let myself remember not the recent memories. Those hurt too much. The old ones, the good ones. Emily at 3 years old crying in my arms the day her father walked out. "Where's Daddy going?" she'd asked, and I'd had no answer except to hold her tighter. I was 30 then, suddenly alone with a mortgage and a toddler, and a fear so deep it could have drowned me, but I didn't drown. I worked. God, how I worked. I remembered Christmas Eve 1998. Emily was 15 and desperate for a ski trip her private school friends were planning. $200 she didn't know I didn't have. I picked up a double shift at the hospital, then another on New Year's, 52 hours in 3 days. I came home with a check and swollen feet and found Emily's note on the fridge. "Thanks, Mom." "You're the best," I'd cried in the shower that night. Not from exhaustion, but from joy. She was happy. That's all that mattered. The years blurred together in my memory, saving every spare dollar, saying no to my own needs, saying yes to hers. The SAT prep course, $800, the laptop for college, $1,200, books, clothes, dental school tuition that made me physically sick to calculate. And then, her clinic. I'd taken out a loan, using this house as collateral, $50,000 to help her open that beautiful practice in Columbus. She never knew about the risk I'd taken. I didn't want her to feel pressured or guilty. That's what mothers do, right? We carry the weight so our children can fly. For years, it worked. We were close. Sunday dinners, daily phone calls, her voice brightening when she saw my number. "Hi, Mom," she'd say, and those 2 words were enough to make every sacrifice worth it. But then came Andrew Wilson. I knew something had shifted the first time she brought him home 3 years ago. He was polite, too polite, the kind of politeness that's actually judgment wrapped in courtesy. He barely touched the pot roast I'd spent hours preparing, claiming some dietary restriction I'd never heard of. 6 months later came the engagement dinner in Boston. The Wilson mansion made my modest home look like a shed. Victoria Wilson, Andrew's mother, greeted me with a smile that never reached her eyes. During dinner, surrounded by silverware I didn't recognize, she'd asked pointed questions. "So you raised Emily alone? How?" "Resourceful." The pause before resourceful said everything. Emily had said nothing in my defense. Worse, she'd looked embarrassed when I used the wrong fork. The changes came gradually after the wedding. Missed calls, canceled visits, comments about my outdated furniture, my simple lifestyle. Last month, she'd actually asked me not to visit the clinic on Thursdays because high-profile clients come in. And, I didn't know. Or rather, I did, and it cut deeper than any scalpel. But yesterday she'd called, "Mom, I want to do something special for your birthday. A real surprise. You deserve it." My throat had tightened with hope. Maybe she was coming back to me. Maybe she remembered who we used to be. I finished my coffee as sunlight filled the kitchen. Tomorrow I'd see my daughter. Tomorrow everything might be okay again. I had no idea that tomorrow would be the day my world shattered, or that it would also be the day I'd finally learn to choose myself. I met Andrew Wilson on a Tuesday afternoon in spring. 3 years ago, Emily had been nervous on the phone. unusual for her. "Mom, I'm bringing someone to dinner, someone important." He arrived in a silver Audi that looked too clean for Ohio roads. Tall, handsome in that generic lawyer way. Pressed shirt, perfect teeth, handshake that lingered a second too long, as if he was trying to prove something. "Mrs. Carter, Emily speaks so highly of you," he said, and I wanted to believe him. Dinner was awkward. I'd made my best pot roast, the one Emily used to beg for as a teenager, but Andrew barely touched it, moving food around his plate like a child avoiding vegetables. "I'm on a restrictive diet," he explained. "Paleo, nothing personal." Everything felt personal. Emily laughed too loud at his jokes, touched his arm too often. She was performing for him, I realized, trying to be someone she wasn't, or maybe someone she was becoming. 6 months later, the engagement dinner in Boston changed everything. The Wilson mansion wasn't just big, it was a statement. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art. I didn't understand, but knew was expensive. I'd driven 12 hours to get there. My only formal dress, bought at a thrift store 5 years earlier, carefully hung in the back seat. Victoria Wilson opened the door. She was everything I wasn't. Tall, thin, blonde hair, styled in a way that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. Her smile was porcelain. "You must be Emily's mother. How lovely to finally meet you." The words were right. The tone wasn't. Dinner was torture. 7 courses, each with its own fork. I watched the others, trying to mimic their movements, terrified of using the wrong utensil. Victoria noticed every mistake. I saw it in her eyes. Little flickers of satisfaction each time I fumbled. "So, nursing," she said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin that probably cost $50. "That must be so fulfilling. Such hard work." She paused. "Physical work." "It is," I said, lifting my chin. "I'm proud of it." "Of course you are. And you raised Emily completely alone." "That must have been challenging." There was that word again, loaded, condescending. "We managed fine," I said, looking at Emily for support. She was studying her plate. Andrew's father, Richard, barely acknowledged me all evening. When he did speak, it was about investments, European vacations, people I'd never heard of. I had nothing to contribute. I was furniture in their world, necessary but unremarkable. The wedding came and went, beautiful, expensive, impersonal. I wore a dress Emily picked out, sat where Emily told me to sit, smiled when Emily needed me to smile. Victoria gave a toast about welcoming Emily into the Wilson family, as if Emily hadn't had a family before. After that, the changes accelerated. "Mom, could you not wear that sweater when you visit? My clients expect a certain aesthetic." "Mom, maybe don't tell that story about when I was little. It's kind of embarrassing." "Mom, Victoria knows an amazing interior designer. I think I'll use her instead of your ideas." Each comment was a paper cut, small but cumulative. I bled quietly. The visits became rare. Phone calls became texts. Texts became nothing. Last month I'd shown up at her clinic unannounced, hoping to take her to lunch. She'd met me at the door, not letting me inside. "Mom, you can't just drop by. I have important clients today." "Could you? Maybe use the back entrance." I'd left without arguing. Cried in my car for 20 minutes in the parking lot. But then, 3 weeks ago, everything seemed to shift. Emily called, voice warm like it used to be. "Mom, your 65th birthday is coming up. I want to do something special, something you'll never forget." Hope is a dangerous thing. It makes you forget all the times you've been hurt because you're so desperate to believe things can be different. "You don't have to do anything fancy," I'd said. "Just having you here would be enough." "No, Mom, you deserve more, trust me." I'd hung up feeling lighter than I had in years. Maybe she was coming back to me. Maybe Victoria's influence was fading. Maybe my daughter remembered who raised her, who loved her, who sacrificed everything. I should have listened to the part of me that whispered warnings. I should have heard the ambiguity in "something you'll never forget," but I didn't. I chose hope instead. Tomorrow was my birthday. Tomorrow, Emily would arrive with her surprise. Tomorrow, I'd learn exactly what my daughter thought I deserved. The day arrived with mockingbird songs and golden light. I woke at 6, despite myself, my body refusing to sleep, through the excitement humming beneath my skin. Today, finally, I spent the morning cleaning, obsessively, pointlessly, The house was already immaculate, but I vacuumed again, dusted surfaces that held no dust, arranged flowers I'd bought yesterday in a vase that suddenly looked cheap. Everything looked cheap through Emily's eyes now, through Victoria's eyes. But it was mine, clean, modest, filled with memories of a childhood Emily seemed determined to forget. In the kitchen, I worked like I was preparing for surgery, precise, focused, chicken pot pie, Emily's favorite from childhood, garden salad with the dressing she used to steal spoonfuls of when she thought I wasn't looking, and a cake, carrot cake, slightly lopsided because baking was never my talent, but made with love. Love had to count for something. At noon I drove to the mall. I'd been thinking about this dress for weeks, circling it like prey, checking the price every few days, hoping for a markdown. $45, still more than I usually spent on myself, but today was special. Navy blue, simple cut, nothing fancy, but it was new. It made me feel worthy. In the dressing room mirror, I barely recognized myself. When had I gotten so old? 65 looked back at me. Gray hair I'd tried to style nicely, lines around my eyes from decades of squinting at charts under hospital fluorescents, hands that showed every year of hard work. But the dress fit well. It would do. I bought lipstick too, a soft pink I'd never have worn during my nursing days. Why bother with makeup when it would be gone by the end of a 12-hour shift? But today, I wanted to feel special. I wanted Emily to see me and think, that's my mother and I'm proud. Back home, I set the table with my good dishes, wedding china I'd received 25 years ago and barely used. Each plate was placed carefully, forks aligned just so. I wasn't Victoria Wilson with her crystal and her 7-course meals, but I could do this much. 4:30 rolled around. I was dressed, lips colored, house perfect. I sat by the window like a teenager waiting for prom, watching the street for any sign of them. Memories flooded me, unbidden. Emily at 7, making me a birthday card with crayons and glitter. To the best mom in the world. Emily at 15, surprising me with breakfast in bed, burned toast and watery eggs. But I'd eaten every bite. Emily at 22, taking me to dinner at a chain restaurant, splitting the bill because she was still in dental school. One day, Mom, I'm going to take you somewhere really nice. You deserve it. When had she stopped thinking I deserved anything? 4:45, a white BMW turned onto my street, impossible to miss with an enormous red bow perched on its hood like a Christmas present. My heart stopped, stuttered, raced. A car. She bought me a car. I pressed my hand to my chest, tears already forming. It was too much, too extravagant. Oh, but God, the gesture, after everything, after the distance and the coldness, she'd done this. She'd remembered me. The BMW parked in front of my house. Emily emerged first, wearing a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. Andrew followed, then Victoria in a tailored jacket, then Richard looking bored already. They looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. I looked down at my $45 dress and suddenly felt foolish. But there was the car, the beautiful, impossible car with its bright bow, and surely that meant. I opened the door, smile stretching my face so wide it hurt. Emily. Happy birthday, Mom. Her voice was strange, flat, rehearsed. She didn't hug me. They filed inside. Victoria's eyes swept my living room with barely concealed disdain. How cozy, she murmured, touching nothing. I offered food. Victoria declined. Richard checked his phone. Andrew took a small plate out of obligation. Only Emily ate, but mechanically, without joy. Something was wrong. The air felt charged. Scripted, I couldn't place it. Then Emily stood, clapping her hands once. Okay, everyone, time for the surprise. She gestured toward the window, toward that gleaming BMW. My legs felt weak, my heart hammered. This was it, the moment she'd tell me she loved me, that she was sorry for the distance, that I mattered. Mom, Emily said, and smiled. Today, we're celebrating someone who truly helped me become who I am. I reached for the arm of the couch, steadying myself, tears of gratitude already forming. I should have known. Hope is the cruelest gift. Emily stood in the center of my small living room like an actress on stage. Every eye on her. I sat on my worn couch, hands clasped in my lap, trying to control the shaking. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a weight pressing on my chest. "Mom," she began, her voice carrying that strange, performative quality I couldn't decipher. "Today you turned 65, a whole lifetime of work and sacrifice." She paused for effect. "And today, we want to celebrate someone who's really made a difference in my life, someone who helped me reach heights I never could have reached alone." My vision blurred with tears. Finally, she saw it all. The nights I'd worked, the money I'd scraped together, the dreams I'd deferred. Finally, she understood. Emily picked up a small box from the side table. Inside it, I knew, were the keys to that beautiful BMW. I half rose from my seat, hand extending instinctively. She walked past me. My hand hung in the air, reaching for nothing. Emily stopped in front of Victoria Wilson, who sat in my armchair like a queen on a borrowed throne. "Victoria," Emily said, her voice thick with reverence, "you deserve this car. Since I married into your family, you've shown me what it really means to help someone. You've opened doors I didn't even know existed. You introduced me to the right people, brought me into the right circles, taught me how to present myself in a world I never could have accessed alone." Victoria accepted the keys with a smile that made my stomach turn, triumphant, knowing, "Oh, Emily, darling, you always had potential. You just needed the right connections to unlock it." The room tilted. Sound became muffled, distant. I tried to make sense of what I was seeing, but my brain refused to process it. The car wasn't for me, but surely there was some mistake. Emily turned to face me directly and her eyes were cold. Unlike some people who think paying for school and college is real help, the words hit like a physical blow. "Emily, what are you—" My voice came out strangled. "Mom!" She cut me off, impatience bleeding through her polished veneer. "Let's be honest for once. You did the minimum, the bare minimum any mother should do. Paying for education, that's not help. That's obligation. You chose to have me. I didn't ask to be born. Feeding me, clothing me, putting me through school. That's basic parenting, not some grand sacrifice." I couldn't breathe. The room spun. "Real help," Emily continued, warming to her subject now, "is what Victoria did. She introduced me to Dr. Henderson, who sponsored me for the Elite Dental Association. She brought me to events where I met clients worth millions. She taught me how to dress, how to speak, how to navigate rooms where people like—" She gestured vaguely at me, at my modest living room, my $45 dress, where people like us don't usually belong. People like us? As if she'd transcended something shameful. "But I tried again. I worked nights, double shifts. I took out a loan on this house. A loan you never told me about." Emily snapped. "Maybe because you knew it was emotional manipulation. Look how much I suffered for you." "Well, Mom, you made choices. You chose your life. Nobody forced you to be a single mother. Nobody forced you to work those jobs. That was your responsibility, not some favor you did for me." Andrew stared at the floor. Richard checked his watch. Victoria's smile never wavered. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clutch them together. 35 years of exhaustion, of sacrifice, of putting her first in every single decision. And it was the minimum. But here, Emily's voice softened into something worse than anger. Condescension. "I didn't forget you." She handed me a paper bag. I recognized the logo. A discount store near the mall. Inside was a thin synthetic scarf with a price tag still attached. $4.99. "It's perfect for you, Mom. Simple, practical, no fuss." She smiled. "You never needed fancy things anyway, right? You've always been basic in a good way," she added, as if that softened the blade. Victoria laughed, a light, crystalline sound that shattered something inside me. I held the scarf, staring at the price tag. $4.99. That's what I was worth. Less than the lipstick I'd bought this morning. I thought of the $75,000 BMW outside. I thought of the loan I'd taken with my house as collateral. I thought of the Christmases I'd worked, the birthday I'd missed, the promotions I'd turned down because they required moving, and I wouldn't disrupt Emily's schooling. "Thank you," I heard myself say. My voice was eerily calm. "It's very appropriate." The next 20 minutes were agony. They stayed for polite conversation. Victoria discussing some charity gala, Richard complaining about golf course maintenance, Andrew silent and uncomfortable. Emily chattered about her clinic, her success, her newest high-profile clients. No one touched my carrot cake. Finally they left. Victoria drove away in her new BMW, honking twice as she departed. Emily waved from Andrew's car window, smiling like she'd done something wonderful. The door closed. Silence crashed over me like a wave. I stood there, still holding the $4 scarf, and felt something inside me crack open. Not just my heart, something deeper, some fundamental belief about the world, about love, about motherhood. I had given her everything, and to her everything was nothing. The sobs came then, tearing out of me with a violence I couldn't control. I collapsed onto the couch, the same couch where I'd rocked her through nightmares, where we'd watched movies on Friday nights, where she'd told me about her first kiss. That girl was gone. Maybe she'd never existed at all. I cried until I had nothing left. Then I sat in the dark, the party decorations mocking me, the uneaten cake growing stale, the good china waiting to be cleared, and somewhere in that darkness, as the hours bled away, something shifted. The grief began to calcify into something harder, clarity. I sat in the dark until 10:30, still wearing the navy dress that now felt like a costume. The food I'd prepared with such care remained on the table, growing cold. That ridiculous bow from the BMW had blown across my lawn. I could see it through the window, a splash of red mocking me under the street light. I didn't cry anymore. Couldn't. Some well inside me had simply run dry. Instead, I felt something else crystallizing, something cold and clear, like water turning to ice. I'd spent my entire adult life as a nurse. I knew how to assess damage, how to triage, how to make hard decisions quickly when survival was at stake. This was a matter of survival. I stood, methodical, and cleared the table, scraped untouched food into the trash, washed the wedding china I'd been saving for a special occasion that had turned into a nightmare. Each motion was deliberate, almost meditative. My hands had stopped shaking. At midnight, I made tea and opened my laptop, the one Emily had convinced me to buy 5 years ago so we could video chat. We never did. She was always too busy. I typed into the search bar, "Best coastal towns for retirees." The results flooded in. Charleston, Savannah, small towns dotted along the Carolina coast with names like Beaufort and Edisto, places where the air smelled like salt instead of snow, where I could walk on a beach at dawn, where nobody knew me as Emily's mother. I clicked through listings, my tea growing cold beside me. Small houses, modest but charming, gardens, porches, ocean views, lives I'd never let myself imagine, because I was too busy imagining Emily's life. Dawn crept through my windows. I'd been awake for 24 hours. I should have been exhausted instead. I felt electrified. I picked up my phone and called my bank as soon as they opened. "I'd like to know my total savings balance," I told the representative. There was typing. A pause. "Mrs. Carter, you have $87,412 in your savings account." My breath caught. $87,000, 40 years of pennies hoarded, bonuses saved, overtime squirreled away, money I'd always thought of as emergency fund or in case Emily needs help. "Thank you," I said quietly. Next I called a realtor. I want to sell my house. By noon, he was at my door with paperwork, a nice man, mid-50s, who didn't ask questions when I said I needed to move quickly. "Market's good right now," he assured me. "Modest homes like this in good neighborhoods should sell within a month." Perfect. Over the next week, I moved like a machine, scheduled a trip to South Carolina to view properties, researched moving companies, started sorting through 4 decades of accumulated life, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to burn. Emily called once during that week. "Hey Mom, just checking in. Did you have a good birthday?" Her voice was light, casual, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just destroyed me. "It was memorable," I said, voice flat. "Great. Listen, I'm super busy with a patient, but let's catch up soon, okay?" "Sure, Emily." I hung up before she could hear the crack in my voice. I found the card she'd made me when she was 8. "To the best mom in the world, who does everything for me. Construction paper, marker, glitter that still shed after all these years. I'd kept it in my bedside drawer. Looking at it whenever I felt tired or discouraged, I took it outside and burned it in a metal bowl. Watched the paper blacken and curl, the glitter melting into nothing. The $4.99 scarf went in next. Synthetic fibers producing toxic smoke. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. 10 days after my birthday, I drove to South Carolina, spent 3 days viewing houses, small cottages, beach bungalows, places that felt like possibility instead of obligation. I found one in Beaufort, a 2-bedroom with a porch and a view of the water if you stood on your toes, $120,000. I made an offer that day, back in Ohio. My house sold faster than expected. A young couple, pregnant with their first child, I saw them looking at the small bedroom where I'd raised Emily, imagining their own future. I hoped they'd be happier than I was. "It's a wonderful home," the woman said, touching the doorframe with reverence. "It was," I replied. "I hope it will be again." 3 weeks after my birthday, everything was in motion. Papers signed, movers scheduled, forwarding address filed with the post office. I went to the phone store and got a new number. The sales clerk looked confused when I said I didn't want to port my old one. "You'll lose all your contacts," he warned. I know. I blocked Emily's number. Andrews, all the Wilsons, deactivated my Facebook account that had exactly 47 friends, most of whom I hadn't spoken to in years, erased myself from the digital spaces where Emily might look for me. I wasn't running away. I was choosing to live. The night before I left Ohio, I stood in my empty house one final time. Boxes were already en route to South Carolina. All that remained was me and my suitcase, and a past I was leaving behind. I didn't feel sad. I felt reborn. Somewhere in Boston, Emily was living her life, surrounded by Victoria's connections, Andrew's money, a world that valued appearance over substance. She'd made her choice. Now I was making mine. I locked the door, put the key in the realtor's drop box, and drove toward the highway. In my rearview mirror, Ohio disappeared ahead of me. The road stretched toward an ocean I'd seen only once in my life, toward a place where nobody would ever call me basic again. The first morning I woke in Beaufort, I thought I was dreaming. No alarm shrieking at 5 a.m., no hospital sounds bleeding through walls, just gulls crying over water and sunlight gentle on my face. I was 65 years old, and I'd never woken to birdsong before. My house was small, but mine in a way nothing had ever been. 2 bedrooms, one for me and one for the past. I was determined to leave there. White walls I could paint any color. A kitchen window overlooking a garden plot begging for attention. A porch where I could sit and do nothing. A concept so foreign it felt like learning a new language. That first week, I established routines that felt like rebellion. Morning coffee taken slowly, not gulped between tasks. A walk to the beach, 20 minutes of feeling sand between my toes. Ocean wind tangling my gray hair. No schedule, no obligations. No one needing me to be anything but present. I met Martha on my 3rd day. She was watering her garden next door, 70 years old with laugh lines that suggested a life well lived. "You're the new neighbor," she said, not as a question but as an invitation. "I am. Running from something or running toward something." Her directness startled me. "Both, I think," she smiled. "Best kind of running, come over for coffee Tuesday. We'll compare scars." That became my first real friendship in decades, one not built on obligation or proximity or shared trauma, but on genuine choice. Martha and I drank terrible coffee every Tuesday and talked about everything except what we were running from. Eventually, we'd get there. But for now, we had the luxury of taking our time. I started volunteering at a free clinic 2 days a week. Same nursing skills, different context. No overnight shifts destroying my body. No bureaucracy crushing my spirit. Just helping people who needed help, then going home to my quiet house, the young couple next door. Mike and Sarah had a 6-month-old named Lucy. Sometimes they'd knock on my door, sheepish and exhausted. "Would you mind watching her for an hour?" I'd take that baby in my arms and feel the weight of motherhood without the burden of it. Lucy would fall asleep on my chest, and I'd remember Emily at that age, the good parts, before everything went wrong. When I handed Lucy back, I could walk away. No resentment, no strings, no $4 scarves and $75,000 cars. I planted a garden, tomatoes, basil, peppers, things I'd never had time to grow. Watching seeds become plants felt like watching my own transformation. In real time, I was growing too, in this new soil. But there were hard days. 2 weeks in, I saw a mother and teenage daughter on the beach, laughing together, and had to go home and sob for an hour. Grief ambushed me in those moments, not constant, but sharp when it came. Some nights muscle memory would take over. I'd reach for my phone to call Emily before remembering I'd blocked her number, before remembering she'd called me basic, minimum. Obligatory, I kept one contact from Ohio, Denise, who'd worked beside me at the hospital for 20 years. She called monthly, updating me on the small dramas of lives I no longer shared. Emily came looking for you, Denise had said during the second month. Showed up at the hospital. I played dumb. Thank you. She seemed frantic, said you weren't answering messages. I'd blocked her before leaving, so I never saw those messages. Part of me wanted to know what she'd said. Most of me knew it didn't matter. I didn't tell her anything, Denise assured me. Your secret's safe. Was it selfish to disappear? Maybe. But I'd spent 65 years being selfless. And where had it gotten me? A cheap scarf and a daughter who thought I'd done the minimum. I joined a yoga class at the library. 12 other women reinventing themselves in their 60s and 70s. Gloria, divorced at 68 and learning to be alone. Ruth, widowed at 72 and rediscovering purpose. We didn't dwell on our pasts. We focused on breath, balance, holding poses that challenged bodies we'd spent decades ignoring. I bought a Kindle, my first new piece of technology in years, and devoured books. Novels about women leaving, women staying, women becoming. I saw myself in those pages, validated in ways I'd never been validated in life. 3 months in, I sat on my porch one evening with a glass of cheap wine. Even small indulgences still felt daring, and realized something profound. I still loved Emily. That hadn't changed. Love doesn't evaporate just because it's not returned, not valued, not enough. But I'd learned something crucial. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. You can love from a distance. You can love without saving. You can love and still choose yourself. I started keeping a journal, something I'd never had time for before. 3 months today, I wrote. For the first time in decades, I feel light, guilty sometimes. Yes, sad, definitely, but free, absolutely. I closed the journal and watched the sun set over water. Tomorrow I'd wake to gulls again. I'd walk on the beach again. I'd live for myself again. And maybe, someday, Emily would understand. Or maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I'd be okay. 6 months into my new life, I was pruning tomatoes when my phone rang. The new number only 5 people had. Unknown, but Ohio area code. My stomach dropped. I answered carefully. Hello, it's Denise. Her voice was tight. I know I'm not supposed to call except Tuesdays, but you need to hear this. I sat on my porch steps, heart accelerating. What happened? Emily's in trouble, bad trouble. The story spilled out. Emily's clinic was failing, had been failing for months. Equipment breakdowns, supply chain problems, 2 malpractice lawsuits from disgruntled patients. Nothing catastrophic individually, but collectively. Devastating. She'd been bleeding money trying to stay afloat. She went to Victoria 3 weeks ago, Denise continued. Asked for $80,000 to cover debts and avoid bankruptcy. I closed my eyes, already knowing how this ended. Victoria said no, said she couldn't mix family with business finances and wouldn't risk the Wilson name on a failing enterprise. Denise's voice held bitter satisfaction. The woman who got a $75,000 BMW told Emily she couldn't spare $80,000 to save her livelihood. The irony was almost beautiful. Almost. Andrew's been helping where he can, but his firms had problems too, and the Wilsons are. Well, they're pressuring him to distance himself from Emily's financial instability. There's talk of divorce. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. There's more, Denise said quietly. Emily found out about your savings. I don't know how. Maybe she hired someone, maybe a bank employee talked, but she knows you had almost $90,000. And she knows you used it for yourself. The air left my lungs. Emily knew I'd had the money to help her and I'd chosen not to. She's looking for you, Denise added. Hired a private investigator. She's desperate. After we hung up, I sat on that porch for hours. The sun set, the air cooled. The ocean kept its steady rhythm. My mind raced. Emily was in crisis. My daughter, the baby I'd rocked through nightmares, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, was drowning. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to save her. But then I heard it again. You did the minimum, Mom. That's obligation, not help. I saw the BMW with its red bow, the $4 scarf, Victoria's triumphant smile. I looked around at my small house, my garden, the life I'd built from ruins. I thought about the peace I'd found here. Fragile, new, but mine. No, I said aloud to the empty porch. Not this time. Emily needed me now because Victoria had proven worthless when faced with real need. The connections, the networking, the real help, all of it evaporated the moment it required sacrifice instead of performance. But I wasn't Emily's backup plan. I wasn't the fallback option when the better choice failed. I'd given her everything once. She'd called it minimum. Now she wanted more and expected me to provide it because that's what I'd always done. Sacrificed myself to save her. But I'd learned something in these 6 months. Saving her meant losing myself again. Always. I couldn't do it. Inside, I locked the doors. Ridiculous, theatrical. But the fear was real. What if she showed up tonight? What if I saw her face and crumbled? I'd been so strong for 6 months. I'd rebuilt myself from nothing. But Emily was my weakness. My wound that never fully healed. That night I barely slept. Every car sound jerked me awake. Every creak of the house became her footsteps. I imagined her appearing at my door, desperate and weeping, and imagined my resolve crumbling like sand. Morning came eventually. No Emily, just gulls and sunlight and the steady, reliable ocean. But Denise's words haunted me. She's looking for you. She'll find you eventually. It wasn't if, it was when. I made coffee with shaking hands and tried to prepare myself. What would I say? How would I stand firm when every maternal instinct demanded I fold? I thought of Marcia, who'd rebuilt her life at 70 after her husband's death. I thought of Gloria from yoga, who'd survived divorce and found herself again. I thought of Ruth, who'd lost her partner but discovered purpose. Women who'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face their own consequences. I just had to believe I was strong enough to be one of them. The ocean kept its rhythm outside my window. I focused on that sound, trying to anchor myself for the storm I knew was coming. Emily was looking for me, and this time, when she found me, I had to be ready to do the hardest thing a mother can do. Say no. 10 days after Denise's warning, she appeared. Saturday morning, 9:30. I was in my gardening clothes about to leave for my beach walk when I glanced out the window and froze. A rental car. Ohio plates. And Emily climbing out. She looked destroyed. My daughter had always been meticulous. Hair salon perfect, makeup flawless, clothes pressed and coordinated. The woman approaching my door was a ghost of that person. Hair in a messy ponytail, no makeup or maybe just poorly applied, jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt. She'd lost weight, not in a healthy way. Dark circles hollowed her eyes. My heart cracked despite everything. This was still my child. The doorbell rang 3 times. Insistent. I stood frozen in my kitchen, hand pressed to my chest, trying to remember how to breathe. I could ignore it, pretend I wasn't home, keep the door between us like a wall between past and future. But we both knew I was here. Running now would just delay the inevitable. I walked to the door, each step feeling like moving through water. My hand hesitated on the knob. Then I opened it. We stood there, mother and daughter. 6 months of silence screaming between us. Mom! Her voice broke immediately. Tears started before she'd even finished the word. I found you. I had to hire someone, but I needed to see you. I didn't move, didn't open the door wider, didn't invite her in, just watched her fall apart on my porch. Can I come in, please? The silence stretched. Finally, I stepped back, giving her space, but not welcome. Emily entered, and I watched her take in my home. She seemed surprised. By what, I couldn't tell. The modest furniture, the tidy space, the fact that I'd built a life without her. "It's nice here," she said, and actually sounded like she meant it. "Thank you, Coffee." "Yes, please." I went to the kitchen, hands trembling as I poured 2 mugs. When I returned, Emily was examining photos on my bookshelf. Me with Martha, me at the beach, me smiling with my new life, pictures she wasn't in. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, coffee between us like a demilitarized zone. "Mom, I'm so sorry," the words rushed out. "For what I said at your birthday. It was cruel. It was wrong. I was influenced by Victoria, by that whole world. I see that now." I sipped my coffee, said nothing. "I hurt you, terribly. And then you disappeared and I was so worried. Why are you here?" "Emily," she faltered. I missed you. I wanted to see you, to know you were okay. When you vanished, I was scared." 6 months, I interrupted, voice calm but cold. "I've been gone 6 months. Why now?" Her eyes darted away. "Things have been difficult. I heard about the clinic." Her head snapped up. I know it's failing. I know Victoria refused to help you. I know you discovered I had savings." I set my mug down carefully. "So I'll ask again. Why are you here?" She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I need you. My money, you mean?" "No, it's not just that, Mom. I really do miss you. I've been thinking about you constantly." "Emily," I held up my hand. "Be honest. Give me that much at least." Something in my tone stopped her performance. She slumped, and I saw her properly then. Not the polished dentist or the Wilson daughter-in-law, but a woman drowning and grasping for anything solid. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, yes. I need help, financial help. The clinic's dying. I've got $80,000 in debts, equipment failing, lawsuits pending. Andrew's firm is struggling too. Victoria won't touch it. Says it would damage the Wilson reputation." Her laugh was bitter. "Turns out all those connections don't mean much when you actually need something real. And you remembered I exist. That's not fair, isn't it?" I leaned forward. "You humiliated me at my own birthday, gave me a $5 scarf after handing Victoria a $75,000 car, told me I'd done the minimum after I spent 35 years sacrificing everything for you. Then you ignored my existence for 6 months until you needed money. What about that is unfair? I made a mistake. I'm trying to apologize." "No, you're trying to get money. There's a difference." Tears streamed down her face now, real and desperate. "Please, Mom, I'm losing everything. My clinic, my marriage. Andrew's family is pushing for divorce. I have nobody else. Victoria abandoned me. You're all I have left." And there it was, the truth underneath everything. "I'm your backup plan," I said quietly. "Victoria was the real help until she wasn't, and now you're back to basic, minimum, obligatory mom." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Emily?" She couldn't answer, or wouldn't. Maybe she didn't know. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the ocean that had become my sanctuary. Behind me, Emily kept crying, kept talking, words tumbling over each other in desperate justification. But I'd made my decision days ago. When Denise called, maybe I'd made it 6 months ago. Standing in my kitchen holding a $4 scarf, I just had to be strong enough to follow through. The conversation stretched past an hour. Emily talked almost without stopping. Explanations, justifications, pleas wrapped in apologies. I listened in silence, watching my daughter unravel. She detailed everything, the equipment failure, $45,000 to replace, the lawsuits, one frivolous but costing $30,000 in legal fees, another settled for $50,000, suppliers cutting her credit, staff quitting, a business built on sand now collapsing. "Andrew tried to help," she said, voice raw from crying. "But his firm's in trouble too. And Victoria," she laughed bitterly. "Victoria said helping me would be financially irresponsible and bad for the family image. The woman I gave a BMW to won't spare $80,000 to save my career." I almost laughed at the irony, almost. "I didn't know you had savings, Mom. You never mentioned it. I thought you lived paycheck to paycheck like always." "I did," I said quietly. "Every extra penny went to you, school, college, your clinic. Did you know I took out a second mortgage on my house to help you open that practice? She went pale. What, you never said? Because I didn't want you to feel pressured. I thought that's what mothers do, sacrifice silently. I smiled without humor. But you were right. That was just the minimum. I didn't mean it like that. I was influenced by, you're 35 years old. Emily, at some point, you have to own your words. Silence crashed between us. I continued, each word measured. You gave me a $5 scarf and gave Victoria a $75,000 car. You told me to my face that I'd never really helped you, that paying for your education was just basic obligation. My voice hardened. And now Victoria's gone. And suddenly you remember I exist. I was wrong. I see that now, Mom, please. You see it because you need me. Where was this clarity 6 months ago? 3 months ago? You only came when Victoria's money dried up. Emily switched tactics, voice desperate and manipulative. Remember when I was little? You always said you loved me unconditionally, that you'd always be there. Are you really going to abandon me now? Rage flared hot in my chest. Don't you dare use my love as a weapon against me. I'm not. Unconditional love doesn't mean accepting unconditional abuse, Emily. It doesn't mean letting you destroy me so you can stay comfortable. I never abused you. You humiliated me publicly. On my birthday, after decades of sacrifices you called the minimum, that was a choice, not a mistake. She tried again, tone shifting to bargaining. Look, I understand you're hurt. You have every right to be. But you're sitting here in this house, retired, with money you don't urgently need, while I'm losing everything. Everything you invested in is about to be wasted. There it was, the entitlement laid bare. I'm not letting anything fail, Emily. You are. You made poor business decisions. That's not my responsibility. But you have the money, you could help me. Why won't you help your own daughter? Because that money is mine. I earned it in 40 years of backbreaking work. It's not yours. But I'm your daughter, and I'm your mother, the one you said did the minimum, the one you traded for a mother-in-law who gave you networking and expensive cars. I stood, needing distance. You made your choice, Emily. You chose status over substance, Victoria over me. Now deal with the consequences. That's not fair. I was confused, Victoria. Andrew's family. The pressure. Is Andrew here defending you now? I gestured at my empty living room. No, you came alone. Probably because he told you it was pointless. She sobbed harder, but I felt my heart hardening. I could see the manipulation now, using guilt, using motherhood, using anything that might work. Mom, please, I'm begging you. I need this money. I'll pay you back, I swear. No. The word hung in the air, simple and final. What? No, I'm not giving you money. You can't be serious. I'm your daughter. I'm in crisis. Then go to Victoria. She's the real help, remember? She won't help me. I already tried. Then you'll have to find another way. I walked to the door, opened it. I'm done being your safety net when you only value me as a last resort. Emily stood, shaking. You're really going to let me lose everything, watch me fall and do nothing? I looked at her, really looked at her, saw not my baby but a grown woman who'd made choices and now faced consequences. Emily, I still love you. A mother never stops loving. But I learned something these past 6 months. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is not save someone from their own decisions. You need to learn what I already know, that real value doesn't come from connections or status. It comes from character until you learn that. No amount of my money will help you. So this is punishment forever. No, this is me choosing not to destroy myself to save you. There's a difference. She grabbed her purse, hands shaking. If you do this, if you refuse me now, I might never forgive you. You could lose me forever. The threat was a knife, sharp and aimed at my weakest point. But I'd survived 6 months without her. I'd survive longer if I had to. Emily, I lost you at my 65th birthday party, when you told me I'd never really helped you. What I'm doing now isn't losing you. It's finding myself. She stared at me, tears streaming, waiting for me to crack. I didn't. She left without another word. The rental car pulled away. I closed the door and slid down against it, finally letting myself cry. Not from regret, but from grief. Grief for what we'd been, what we'd never be again, for the necessary pain of boundaries. But when the tears stopped, I felt something unexpected. Relief. I'd done it. The hardest thing a mother can do. I'd said no and I'd survived. The door clicked shut and I collapsed against it, sliding down until I sat on the floor, back pressed against wood. The tears came, deep, wrenching, cleansing. I cried for the relationship that would never be the same, for the daughter I'd imagined versus the woman who just left, for 35 years of sacrifice ending in a $5 scarf and a closed door. I cried for 20 minutes. Then, like a storm passing, I simply stopped. I stood, washed my face in the kitchen sink, looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, eyes red, face puffy, but underneath, something different, something strong. I'd just done the impossible, and I was still standing. The afternoon stretched ahead. I needed to process, to move, to breathe. I grabbed my hat and walked to the beach. Despite the heat, the sand burned my bare feet, but I welcomed the sensation. Proof I was alive, present here. I walked for an hour, waves crashing beside me, questions circling. Had I been cruel? Should I have given her the money? Don't mothers always forgive? But then I remembered. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasing consequences. Love doesn't mean self-destruction. Victoria Wilson haunted my thoughts. The woman Emily had praised, who'd received a BMW, who'd been celebrated as real help. Where was she now? Gone. Vanished. Her connections and networking evaporated when faced with actual need. I'd been right about that world. It was performance, not substance. But more importantly, I recognized I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for survival. If I'd given Emily the money, I'd have saved her clinic, but lost myself. I'd have returned to the pattern. Sacrifice, be used, be called minimum. The cycle would never end. Coming home, I found Martha on her porch. She took one look at my face and knew. Your daughter came. How did you? Saw the rental car. Ohio plates. Heard crying. She patted the chair beside her. Want to talk? I told her everything. The birthday, the BMW, the scarf. Today's confrontation. Martha listened without judgment, her weathered hands folded in her lap. When I finished, she said simply, sometimes the most loving thing we do is let the people we love face their own storms. You're not being cruel, you're being brave. Those words, from someone with nothing to gain, brought unexpected comfort. That evening, I made soup for one, ate on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky, orange and pink. This routine, once lonely, now felt like choice rather than abandonment. I opened my journal and wrote, today I chose myself again. Emily came, asked for money disguised as reconciliation. I said no. My heart aches, but my soul is quiet. I learned that loving someone doesn't mean losing myself. I can love Emily from a distance, hoping she finds her way, without sacrificing myself on her altar again. Maybe someday she'll understand. Maybe not, but I finally understand myself. I closed the journal and did something symbolic. Found the box of Emily's childhood photos I'd kept in my closet. Didn't throw them away. I'd never do that, but I moved them to the guest room closet, out of sight. Acknowledgement that the past existed and mattered, but wouldn't dominate my present. Then I did something radical. Booked a trip, Charleston, a city I'd always wanted to see. Reserved a room at a bed and breakfast for next weekend, my first solo trip. Taken purely for pleasure, with no purpose beyond joy. In bed that night, I reflected. I was 65. If I lived to 85, I had 20 more years. 20 years I wouldn't waste being invisible, being minimum, being insufficient. 20 years to simply be myself. Sleep came easier than it had in months. No nightmares, no paralyzing guilt. Just peace. My last thought before dreams took me. I chose, and it was the right choice. I woke the next morning to gulls and sunlight, made coffee slowly, walked to the beach as dawn broke over water. The ocean was constant, reliable, indifferent to human drama, exactly what I needed. At yoga that Tuesday, Gloria asked if I was okay. You seem lighter. I am, I said, and meant it. The weeks rolled on. Emily didn't call. I didn't expect her to. Maybe she never would. Maybe our story ended with that closed door and my firm no. Or maybe, years from now, she'd understand. She'd learn what I learned. That real help isn't connections or money. It's teaching someone to survive their own mistakes. It's having the courage to let them fall so they can learn to stand. But that was her journey. Mine was here, in this small beach town, in this simple house, in this life I'd built from ruins. One morning, 6 weeks after Emily's visit, I stood on my porch with coffee and realized something profound. I was happy, actually. Genuinely happy, not the performance of happiness. Not happiness contingent on someone else's approval, just happy. I thought of the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Invisible. Used. Told she'd done the minimum after giving everything. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who knew her worth, someone who chose herself. Some love stories end. Marriages fail, friendships fade. Even mother-daughter bonds can break. But the love story I was writing with myself, that was just beginning. I sipped my coffee and watched pelicans dive for fish. The ocean kept its rhythm. Life continued, and I, for the first time in 65 years, was truly, completely, unapologetically living for myself.